Okay, wealthy Austrians. This is Austria. That's that country south of Germany. Wealthy Austrians, on the front cover of their equivalent of Time magazine this week, are calling for an increase on taxes on them. 70% of all the wealth in that country is owned by the top 10%. It's worse here in the United States. The inequality is even worse. And we've got a group called Patriotic Millionaires that support the Buffett rule. Elizabeth Warren, the Buffett rule basically says that, there's a minimum tax. After you make a couple $1 million, no matter how many tax deductions you can get written into the tax code, it doesn't matter. You're going to pay a 30% income tax. You're going to pay what Warren Buffett's secretary pays. And that's not even the top rate. The top rate is 39%, but you're going to pay 30%. Mitt Romney famously paid 14%, and if he'd actually claimed the religious deduction for all his giving to the church, it would have been 11%. Remember that? So anyhow, why are they doing this? Well, one of the Austrians said, I don't want to be a rich man in a society that can't pay to invest in a fair education system. In other words, I don't want to be a rich man in a poor country. Isn't this common sense? Shouldn't we have an education system where anybody who has the intellectual capacity to go to college or the intellectual and physical capacity to go to trade school can do so at no cost to them? This is an investment. If we invest 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, $150,000. If the government invests $150,000 in sending somebody to college long enough to become a brain surgeon, I guarantee that brain surgeon is going to pay more than $150,000 in additional taxes throughout the course of their working career than they would have if they had never gone to college and they got a job at 7-Eleven. This is how we made a profit on the GI Bill. We need to keep reminding our politicians, America made a profit on the GI Bill. We tried this experiment once. Every other country in the world does it routinely. You want to go to college? It's free. In Denmark, not only is it free, but they pay you a stipend and they give you the books. They pay you to go to college in Denmark. Every other country in the world gets it, except us. Why? Because in America, the banksters run the show. Why is that? Well, because back in 1976, it didn't used to be this way. Prior to 76, pretty much anybody could go to college in America if they had the ability and they were willing to work a summer job. No exaggeration. I was there. I did it. Same for my wife. The same for my parents. Same for her parents, or at least her father. I don't know if her mom went to college or not. Frankly, I should ask one day. But the point is that it was ubiquitous. Everybody understood it. Abraham Lincoln created the land-grant colleges because he wanted to invest in the intellectual infrastructure of America going forward after the Civil War. Let's not just build the railroads, which he had done. It's a nice physical and transportation infrastructure. Let's not just subsidize oil wells and energy infrastructure, where we'll get a return on that in terms of society growing and the tax revenues will come back, will more than pay for the cost of the subsidies to the oil industry. I mean, it ain't that way anymore. They still get the subsidies, but they don't pay the taxes anymore. But prior to 76, when the Supreme Court decided that spending money on politicians was not a behavior that could be regulated by law, but instead was free speech that cannot be regulated by law. Prior to 1976, when the Supreme Court concluded this, and then 77, when they really put it into law in Boston versus Bilotti, and then in 2010, when they elevated it to the level of religion in Citizens United, and then this year with McCutcheon, which in and of itself is, ever since then, basically what we've had billionaires and big corporations rewriting our laws and our rules to their benefit and to screw the average working American. 34 years of Reaganomics has just devastated us. And it's been driven by the rich. It's been driven by this doctrine that rich people should have a larger voice in government than poor people. And in fact, the studies show this. We had on this program the guy who co-authored the study out of Princeton, as I recall it was, in which they found that if you're in the top 10% of Americans economically, your legislative wishes are 70 to 80% likely to be fulfilled. Whereas if you're in the 50th percentile, if you're right smack dab in the middle or anywhere below that, if you're an average American or a poor American, your legislative agenda is as likely to be passed or unlikely to be passed as random noise. There's no correlation between what the vast majority of voters want and what legislators do. The only measurable correlation is between what people in the top 10% want and what legislators do. And the reason for that is because the Supreme Court has wildly exceeded its authority and found in the First Amendment something that's not there, that money is somehow protected as a constitutional right, spending money on politics, and thus turned a plutonomy, an economy dominated by plutocrats, by the rich, into a plutocracy, an oligonomy, an oligarchic form of economy into an oligarchy, an oligarchic form of government. We have oligarchs, people like Darrell Issa, worth $700 million, running the show. Not to mention the Koch brothers. I mean the unelected billionaires running the show. This is just wrong. So, number one, rational gun control laws. The vast majority of Americans want them. Congress isn't going to pass them because the NRA is dropping millions of dollars on politicians. Public education for everybody. The vast majority of Americans want it. Ain't going to happen. Banksters.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 866-987-THOM.
At the end of the day, to get this core cancer out, health care for all, we need to amend the Constitution. Check out movetoamend.org.